Have you guys ever decided to be one thing for Halloween but also another? Well, and let me show you how. A little disclaimer here, this video will not classify as a tutorial because I suck at pointing things out ahead of time, so I do not have all the steps filmed, and to be quite honest, I don't even remembered what I filmed. So, yeah. So the very first thing I did was to cut a large rectangle out of satin fabric. The rectangle measures 60 inches in width and 30 inches in length. I folded and sewed that rectangle in half using a French seam. For each ruffles you see here, I cut and gathered roughly 8 inches times 3 yards of netting, which was sewn in half before I sewn it directly into a satin skirt. You can adjust the measurements to make your skirt less or more poofy, it's really up to you. Now it was time to sew layers of netting skirts. I cut out 2 rectangular pieces of netting, one that measured 5 inches and 2 yards, and the other one that measured 10 inches and 4 yards. I gathered the bottom 10-inch wide piece of netting into the same length as the 5-inch piece of netting. Then I sewed these 2 pieces together, right sides together. Then I folded it in half and sewed it right sides together. I ended up making a total of 3 netting skirts of different dimensions that will be layered on top of each other. This is the base layer. This is the second layer. And this is the third layer. And here is me gathering the top of the second and third layer of the petticoat netting so I can sew it on to the first layer of the petticoat netting. I don't think I really explained that good, but oh well. Also, my mic is working again. Yay! Now I am sewing all 3 layers of the netting skirts all on top of each other. Now for the exciting part, we will be sewing the 3-layer netting skirt thing onto the satin skirt that we made earlier. I sewed the netting skirt 15 inches from the bottom of the satin skirt. I also made little markings on the satin skirt to make sure that when I'm sewing the petticoat netting, it wouldn't be crooked. Now I really hope you all understood those last few steps because you will be making another 3-layer netting skirt, but with different dimensions. These are the 3 dimensions used for the longer skirt, and you'll be sewing this to the satin skirt as well. As for the waistband, I suggest you guys all wander over to the melikestea petticoat tutorial because I used that video to help sew my waistband. Now I am just simply going through the layers of my petticoat. Now what you see here is the skirt that will separate the layers between the petticoat and all of this madness. To make the skirt, I simply sewn together 2 circle skirts. The top is cut out of satin and the bottom is cut out of organza. And here are the dimensions. Now it's time for ruffles. To sew these ruffles, I am using a gathering foot to save time. Funny story, I thought this foot was called a ruffling foot, so I googled it to make sure, and I found that ruffling foots exist, and now I really want one. So I bought 2 spools of tulle off of Amazon. They were both 200 yards times 6 inch each, and I folded that tulle in half and gathered it using a basting stitch and the gathering foot. I also bought about 150 yards of white ribbons from Walmart and sandwiched the tulle in between them and sewed the entire thing down. Now I have made several more circle skirts of varying length and width out of organza. Remember those tulle ribbons we made? We will be pinning and sewing those ribbons onto the organza skirt like so. Now you will be sewing that organza skirt onto the satin organza skirt hybrid like so. Now here is 2 skirts sewn on. Now here is 4. For the fourth and final organza skirt, I added 5 rows of ribbons instead of 4, and then I trimmed the waist to have a more of a high-low effect, and then I created another high-low skirt out of satin fabric, and then I sewed the organza and satin skirt to the waist of the organza satin skirt hybrid thing. I finished off the skirt with an elasticated waistband. Up next was to make the Katniss'S cage wings thingy. I found a picture of Katniss online and enlarged it using Photoshop and printed this out to use as a guide. I made the wings using Instamorph, which was a moldable plastic thing. However, the plastic only becomes moldable for a short time after you have let it soften in hot water, so I literally heated up the plastic by keeping them in the pot over a stove. Before I painted over the cage with metallic paint, I went outside and poured hot boiling water all over the cage to get the plastic to soften a bit. Then I put the cage against my body to try to shape it so the cage would curve along my body when I wear the dress. Now it's time to make the Mockingjay dress. You can make whatever dress you want as long as you're using dark blue or black fabric. For the dress, I decided on making a halter top dress, and I draped the bodice using my dress form. If you do not have a dress form, that's fine. You can use your own body or you can trace a pattern from your existing dress. Also, my dress form is a bit smaller than me, so I had to make several adjustments to my pattern. You don't have to make this dress. You can also just use a dress you already own, or you can buy a black dress. I'm just very extra. After I finalized my pattern, I cut out all of the pieces for the bodice. This included the 2 main pieces on fold, 4 side pieces, and 4 back pieces. I also forgot to mention that these seams are called princess seams. After cutting some notches into the seam allowances, I cut out 2 strips of fabric and used them to create the straps. Next, I sandwiched the straps between the lining and the front bodice piece, and only sewed close where I used Photoshop to mark. After sewing a long circle skirt to my dress, I was going to also add an invisible zipper closer. But then I saw that my zipper was too short, so I instead chose to sew the zipper into the skirt while making the back laced up. To make the patterns for the wings, I basically drew a long half oval kind of shape and cut this out and fold on black canvas fabric. I draped the wings on my dress form and marked where it folded naturally so I would be mindful of where I would place my feathers to keep that fold. I then used a hot glue gun to glue on nearly 400 black and white feathers. I used pictures online of Katniss'S wings as a guide. When I was done, I glued 2 ropes handle onto the edge of the wings. So I did also try to create some sort of flame dress using these weird orange and gold Christmas fabric from Michaels. But I decided to scrap the whole idea because it was getting way too complicated. Also, the fabric was like hell to work with. Now I was trying to figure out the bodice for the wedding dress. At first I traced out a flowy top that I have made a while ago, and then I changed my mind after I saw how ugly it looked and decided to go with a kind of a loose fitting princess seam top similar to the one that I have made for my Mockingjay dress. After finalizing my bodice pattern, I cut out all of the necessary pieces and sewed them together. The process was very similar to my Mockingjay bodice. After sandwiching the straps in between the lining and the front, I trimmed the straps just enough just so they are overlapping each other by 1 inch. I sewed on velcro on the overlapping area. Now this is what the bodice should look like. The bodice sides should also be overlapping each other. Gather the bottom of the high-low satin skirt and sew the right sides together to the bottom of the bodice. Where the sides of the bodice were, slits were cut halfway into the skirt. I also sewed velcro onto the side of the bodice. To attach the metal cage, I sewed on several loose ribbons into the front of the bodice and literally tied the cage onto the bodice using the ribbons. And that is how you make a Katniss Everdeen wedding dress transformation gown. Yeah, I don't know how to call this. Now, I forgot to film a how to wear this costume video clip, but basically you first wear your petticoat and then you pull over your wedding gown over the petticoat, and then you wear the black dress, and then you wrap up the black dress with the bodice of the wedding gown. If you didn't understand any of that, don't worry, I have some videos in the description for you guys to check out that helped me research and figure out how to design this dress. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I now have some very serious SAT studying to do. Bye!